Hello, folks. Welcome to this episode of the Prophet Easy One. I'm going to bring up some things in this video that I don't think I've mentioned in any of my videos, but I've written out a lot of things in comments dealing with some of these things that I'm going to bring to you. And believe it or not, a lot of this has to do with death. But this has a happy ending, so stay tuned. And I'm going to try to keep this brief and not get into too much stuff. But I want to start with a local death here of a woman. Very, very wonderful German woman. I knew her husband. I knew her daughter very well. Actually, she's still a neighbor. And we were very close friends. But, well, I don't want to say too much. But her dad died. In fact, I was there when he was dying from, they'd given him some kind of wrong medication, and it caused him to get bleeding on the brain, and I had to see him laying in bed and suffering and squirming and wanting to talk, but unable. Fortunately, he lived to be an old man, I think into his 90s, and was a really, I liked the guy. I really liked him a lot. But I'd done a lot of work for them at their house, inside and out, so I spent a lot of time with them. Oh, she was so gracious. She would fix me wonderful breakfast. I mean, just overload me with food all the time. And like I say, her daughter and I were very close. I still see her from time to time, but we don't communicate as much. But what happened is, after he died, and I saw the suffering she was going through because she loved him dearly. And to have to see him constantly squirming on that bed. But I gave it a little time before going to see her. I'd gotten a card, and I think it was probably 4 or 5 days. You know, I wanted her to overcome some of the stuff a little bit. And I was doing a job in her neighborhood. I said, let me run by there now. I was taking a lunch break. And I come up. She's in her driveway with another woman. And she looked like she was smiling. She was cheerful. I thought, oh, great. Good time to talk to her. And as I pulled into the driveway, she started giving me a hard time, telling me to go away, not right now, and all this. And I thought, no problem. I drove out of there. The next thing you know, her daughter was calling me 3 or 4 times a day, getting on me for going to visit her mother. Now, I don't know if she was jealous or thinking I'm trying to pick her mother up or something. I haven't got a clue, but she was constantly calling me and would not stop. And I shared with her, and she's one who believes in the scriptures. I kept sharing scriptures with her. And here's one I'm going to share with you right now that I shared with her. It says, pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. So see, true religion and undefiled is this, to visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. But her daughter, man, she just didn't want to hear it, and it got to where I just stopped communicating with her because it was just always bad stuff. You know, we have talked, she's apologized, but we're not so close like we used to be. And speaking of that, you know, to visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction. A good friend of mine in the Keys, Johnny, worked with his dad for years. They were contractors. Johnny's a great guy, and so was his dad. And he died at a young age of like 54. And Johnny was devastated. I tried to talk to him a bunch of times. His wife said he wasn't talking to anybody. But I did get invited to the funeral. And see, when I go to funerals, I don't go there for the sake of the dead. I go for the sake of the living, to comfort them, especially if I know they were Christians. Now, so I ran into Johnny at the funeral, and his wife told me he hadn't eaten in like 4 or 5 days. And I shared with him. We talked about how his dad was a Christian and how he was a Christian. And I shared with him those things in Thessalonians where it talks about how, you know, see, he wasn't like some that have no hope. You know, his father was a Christian and he was a Christian. So they will get back together eventually. Let me go ahead. I don't want to lose it. Yeah, that's okay. I want to let's go directly there because see, I've gone to so many funerals, and boy, these words are very comforting. I'm not going to mention some of the really terrible ones I've been to, but I just want to find this for you here real quick. If I can get it to go, come on now. All right. Yeah, I'm going to read it to you. Because this is, boy, has it been comforting at funerals. And it's what I used to comfort my mother when we thought maybe she was going to die. And she was all good with it. Yeah, she wasn't worried about it. She'd already said goodbye to me and to my dad. Said it was good that she'd known us. But she lived. Okay, here we go. So this is what I like sharing with people like I did with Johnny. And it totally changed everything. And, you know, Johnny and I have always been tight. I bailed him out on some big jobs where he was going to get sued. He'd always, when he'd run into me in a restaurant or something, him and his wife would always pick up my tab because he said I'd saved him so much that I didn't even have a clue. Plus, I did a lot of great work for him. All right, here we go. This is what I like sharing with them, but I can't do this with non-Christians. But I would not have you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep, that you sorrow not, even as others who have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with him. For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, and with the voice of the archangel, with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So shall we ever be with the Lord. Wherefore, comfort you one another with these words. And that's what I do. That's what I said. Like God said, true religion and undefiled is this, to visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction. But I don't even want to go into this one wedding or funeral that I went to, but I want to talk about two close friends of mine who passed away. These are good stories now. Okay. Actually, let me mention a different one first. A local guy here now. He basically Coca-Cola'd himself to death. And I spoke to him plenty all day long, drinking the biggest Coke glasses you could get, eating, you know, he spent a lot of time just hanging out at one of those 24-hour breakfast places and keep drinking sodas all day. And it got to the point, a very nice guy though. I spoke to him many times. And it got to the point where he had a hard time getting in and out of his pickup truck because the steering wheel was pushing inches into his belly. And he kept admitting, I talked to him several times about his diet, you know, trying to help the guy. And he knew he had a problem, but he wasn't able to overcome it, and it overcame him. But what ended up happening is I heard he passed away. And he was a very nice guy. And I'd met his mother, I believe, just once. I'd done a small job for her. So I picked up a card, and I went by there. And I expected it to be very sad, but I was hoping that I could comfort her. Well, as it turned out, his brothers and sisters were there, and they were so glad that I showed up. And of course, I had nothing but good things to say about Robert. I couldn't think of anything bad to say other than he ate too much, and they all knew that. And they just treated me like a king while I was there. Oh, they fed me. They were just so appreciative that I showed up, because this guy was definitely a loner. He really didn't have a lot of friends. And here I show up unexpectedly. And the man, they had to show me their photo albums going all the way back. They were just so happy and proud that someone had shown up and had good things to say about their brother and about her son. So as it turned out, that was wonderful. But now I want to tell you about Joe Bailey. Now this guy was in his early 80s, and I used to run an all-night restaurant. And when I got off at 7 a.m., I was going out trying to start a construction business. So he sold these building products. They were designed to be sold to residents or businesses, but most residential people, they didn't want to deal with having to learn about them and applying them, although they were things that most people could do yourselves with very minimal tools. But he dealt with nothing but commercial stuff. Oh, and he was up, he'd come in there like 4:30 every morning, and he got me. See, he sold the materials for these companies, but his biggest objection was that people didn't want to have to put them on. So we lined up together where I would use the materials, if they bought them. And before he died, he actually set me up with the company, and I became a distributor for him because the products were pretty much the best you could get at the time. So anyway, he would come in about 4:30 every morning. I would buy him breakfast. I'd pay for it out of my pocket. And that was part of the deal. And then by 6 a.m., he's already hitting the road, hitting businesses. I mean, the guy at his age, he was still a hustler. And it got to the point where we weren't doing business for a while. And I said, Joe, man, I don't know if I can keep affording to buy you breakfast every day unless you come up with some work. Well, he did. And things were great. But he ended up passing away. And I get an invitation to the funeral. The only other one in the family I think I've met, he had two brothers there and a sister, and I'd met the sister. I'd done some work for her. But I come into the doorway, and immediately I was approached, and they began treating me like the belle of the ball. They said, "Oh, are you Raul?" I said, "Yeah." And they go, "Oh, Joe always spoke so highly of you. This is Joe Bavely." I said, "Oh, well, I always spoke highly of him, too." And man, I don't know what he must have said, but he said a lot of good because it was like I didn't know anybody there but the sister, but they all knew who I was. So one of the first things they did, they handed me this like an epitaph that Joe had written years earlier because he'd had like triple bypass surgery when that was still a fairly new thing. I think that was like in the late 70s he had it. And here he lived all these extra years. So he'd had this paper already written up, basically saying that he didn't want anybody sad at his funeral because he knew he was going to a better place. He was saved and sanctified. He had all these good things to say. And like I said, he didn't want anybody sad because he was going to a better place and because he should have been dead so many years sooner. He mentioned the years. I wish I still had a copy of that epitaph. It was really touching. But he said, so all these extra years, hey, that was just a bonus that God gave me. So please don't be sad. Be happy for me. And so, yeah, it was a happy funeral. It really was. And I'm not going to get into some other ones. I have been to happy. And I've been invited to one because I've done so much to help this guy in his lifetime. And he communicated much with his family. And most of them had money. He didn't because he had a lot of physical disabilities. And when they were having a funeral, they called me and invited me. And I was the only non-family member there. And they actually put me up in a suite on the ocean down in like West Palm or I forget, somewhere in that area. It was absolutely fantastic. But this was almost a $300 a night room. And they put me up there. Not only that, all the beer and wine, because they had way too much left over, and they were all from out of state. And they were giving all the rest of the food to the fire department. And they said, well, Raul, we know that you like wine. Would you like the rest of the wine? I said, well, sure. She said, hey, you guys go get all that wine and take it out in Raul's van. And then they brought me out all this beer, which I don't drink it much, but, it's okay to have around for company. And that wine lasted me for the longest time. Heck, I believe I gave a few bottles of it away. But once again, I was like an honored guest, though, because they knew of all these things I'd done for Charlie over the years. But now, I'm already going long, but let's get back to Joe. Here I'm at his funeral. Like I said, it was a happy funeral. I leave there, and I call my best friend, Bill. And he just got back into town. He'd be out on a ship 6, 8 months out of the year. He'd come back to town, and always had some kind of vacation plan for us, whether I could afford to or not. You know, usually I'd swing it. If not, he would loan me the money and I'd pay him back. But I never regretted it. It was always some great things. Uh, Now, he was telling me that he just got back and he'd been looking at this place in West Virginia called Nob Hill. It's like the tallest mountain in West Virginia, I think. There's a crater lake up there. It's actually very beautiful, very serene. I think I only saw one other person up there the whole time we were there. Did see quite a few beavers. Didn't have much luck fishing. We got rained on a lot, but we had a good time. Uh, but we had his son, too. He just got in custody of his son. And on the way up there through these mountain roads, I'd known him for a long time, and he was a great guy. And we got talking about being saved, you know. And he kept saying, "Oh, yeah, man, I'm saved," and this, that. And we talked, and it was great. And I said, "Bill, you know, man, as much as I've known you, I never knew all these things about you." And we talked so much. And you know, the Bible says there's a friend that sticks closer than a brother. Well, that's how Bill was. And he'd proven it to me, and I'd proven it to him many times. I won't get into all of that. But here we are talking about all these things. Now, this is right after Joe's funeral. You know, he called me, and I think we took off that night. We headed up to the mountains and up to West Virginia. Well, exactly 30 days later to the day, Bill died. And he was supposed to come and work with me while he was in town. I'd gone up to Jersey with him a couple of days before to Bayonne to get his physical because he was with the Military Sealift Command. And they gave him some medication that killed him. You know, over 100,000 people a year die in this country from wrong medications. I'm very much against most medications. That's why I do medicinal herbs, because they're safer and more effective 93% of the time. Safer and more effective. And I will get into that on my new channel soon, or may even put a lot of it on this channel. I'd rather do it on the other one. But getting back to Bill. So here's what happened. He didn't show up to work a couple of days. And he assured me, "Oh, I will be there tomorrow for sure, Raul." Because he just got back into town. And he had his son. He'd gotten custody of his son, which was great because the mother he was living with was really bad. You know, Bill and I had been taking his son places. In fact, he went up there to the mountains with us. And we went boating, had a great time. Camping and fishing. Well, I remember telling Bill that night as we were getting up to the top of the mountain how good of a friend he'd been, and that if he ever needed anything, whether he thought I could help him or not, to ask me, because I would do everything that I could to help. And like I said, next thing you know, boom, he's gone. It was either, yeah, I believe it was a month, not a week, but it was to the day, like. And I went to that funeral. Well, here's what happened. His sister Kathleen, no, I called him because I was anticipating his help that day. You know, he planned to go out one more time on the ship. He was going to come back and go into business with me. Now, he told me that. I didn't tell him that. But meanwhile, every time he came back, he was investing in tools and equipment. He bought a new van. Then he turned around and won a new van, which he passed away before he ever collected it. But trying to make a long story. Anyway, I called, and his sister Kathleen answers. She goes, "Raul, I think he's dead." I said, "What?" She goes, "I think he's dead." I said, "Who are you talking about?" She says, "My brother Bill. I think he's dead." She was still in shock. I said, "What do you mean you think he's dead?" She said, "Well, he's all cold and blue." I said, "Kathleen, I'm coming right now." Now, I lived a long ways off, but I wanted to go there and lay hands on him and pray for him. Well, before I'd ever gotten there, the ambulance had shown up and taken him away. And here I am at the funeral. And you know, it's a military funeral, and it was all pretty good until they folded up the flag and gave it to Bill's mom. And then there were a lot of tears. But I go home that night, and I'm in bed, and I'm saying my prayers as I normally did. And I was praying for Bill. I said, now, Bill, see, Bill wasn't a ladies' man or nothing, but he was a great guy. Oh, man, he'd give you the shirt off his back. He was just a true, wonderful person. And let me see, where was I? Because we're going to get to something here in the Bible about this. Let me just find this. Well, and then I'll regain my thoughts. So anyway, yeah, that's what happened. Here I am. I'm laying in bed, and I'm praying for him. Now, I know once he's dead, there ain't nothing I could do to change things. Like I said in one of my latest videos, you can help them while they're living. While they're alive, there's still hope. But once they're dead, you can't do anything to change stuff. But I was praying for Bill anyway. I said, God, now, Bill wasn't perfect, but he was this and that. And I said, I know that, about the only thing kind of that he used to do wrong was sometimes when he'd be in foreign ports, like I said, he wasn't a ladies' man and he would pay for a woman. And I prayed about that for him and asked that the Lord would forgive him for all of that. And here I was sad. I was there, I had tears in my eyes. And I'm praying for him. And then I go to do my nightly reading, as I normally would do. And this is one of those times I've mentioned in several of my videos how that God often answers my prayers by me just opening the Bible after asking him something, and boom, it's right there. Now, I don't have to look for it or anything. It's just there, and it's happened so many times. It's not always just there. A lot of times I do have to seek. But in this case, God wanted to comfort me. So I opened the Bible, and it opened to Psalms 15. And I began to read. Now keep in mind, this is just after I prayed for the best friend I ever had on this planet, except for Jesus Christ. And that was Bill Little. Here it is, a Psalm of David. Lord, because I was praying that Bill would be taken to heaven. A Psalm of David. Lord, who shall abide in thy tabernacle? Who shall dwell in your holy hill? He that walks uprightly and works righteousness and speaks the truth in his heart. He that doesn't backbite with his tongue, nor does evil to his neighbor, nor takes up a reproach against his neighbor. He that in whose eyes a vile person is condemned, but he honors them that fear the Lord. He that swears to his own hurt and changes not. In other words, if you make a deal, hey, even if it's going to hurt you, you better stick to that. He that putteth not out his money to usury, nor takes reward against the innocent. He that does these things shall never be moved. So that's where the Lord led me, and I read that, and the next thing you know, I got a smile on my face. And instead of tears of sadness, I had tears of joy, knowing that I will see Bill in heaven. I just want to read that back to you one more time. And we're going to close with that. Now, before we close with that, I'm going to tell you, you need to read your Bible. You need to pray. Hey, and you need to live righteously. And wow, this was quite an answer. And I look forward to seeing Bill. Yeah. A Psalm of David. Lord, who shall abide in thy tabernacle? Who shall dwell in your holy hill? He that walks uprightly and works righteousness and speaks the truth in his heart. He that doesn't backbite with his tongue, nor does evil to his neighbor, nor takes up a reproach against his neighbor, in whose eyes a vile person is condemned, but he honors them that fear the Lord. He that sweareth to his own hurt and changes not. He that lends not his money to usury, nor takes a reward against the innocent. He that does these things shall never be moved. And all those things fit Bill to a T. So that was a happy ending. Yeah. And I've had sad endings, knowing that certain people I've known weren't Christians and have died. But there's several of those I did try. I tried. There's only so much I can do. So make sure that you're one. Make sure that when you die, you will dwell in God's tabernacle, that you shall enter his holy hill. All right. That's it for now. And, yeah, that's it.